Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another week of Growing with My Fellow Growers. I'm your host, Jack Greenstock, joined as always by an amazing panel. I'm going to pass it over first to our regular panelist this week, Spartan Grown, who's going to be joining us from the road for the first bit of the show this week. Cheers, Spartan.
Hey, thanks, Jack. Yep, I'm remote today, and it's going to be that way probably every other weekend. But I'll be getting home at the tail end of the show at least. So I'm Spartan Grown. You can find me on Instagram at Spartan Grown, all one word, no spaces. Or you can shoot me a email at spartangrown@gmail.com or russ@gmlarmy.com, and I can answer all your growing and lighting questions.
Happy to have you back, and thank you so much for going through the efforts. So we do appreciate it. And next up, we've got welcoming back Matthew Gates.
Yeah, hey everyone, Matthew Gates, IPM specialist. So we'll see if we talk any bug stuff. I'll be here to talk about that. I just got back from a conference where I talked about um, the sort of future of IPM. So we could maybe talk about that too potentially.
Certainly a possibility for tonight. And let me go ahead and introduce the rest of our panelists. We've got next Noah the Grower.
How's it going, everybody? I'm Noah Big Grow on Instagram. You can find me there, and happy to be here.
Happy to be here with everybody as well, and I'm happy to see a few faces returning back, including Brandon Rust.
Yeah, hey, how's it going, everybody? It's been a minute. I've been traveling a lot and trying to get some stuff going on investment capital to build factory. So good to be back. Brandon Rust here. You can follow me on Instagram at Rust Brandon or on LinkedIn. Same handle, and you can check out all the educational blog stuff on the Bokashi Earthworks website.
We're happy to have you back. And tonight I had a few kind of topics in mind. Matthew being here, I am always interested to see or hear if he's got any new IPM info or technology that he's seen. I saw recently there's a lot of palm trees out here, and there's a lot of tree trimmers that have to typically scale the tree, go up and cut off some of the lower leaf just to maintain so that they're not falling off or falling over and getting, in the street and things like that. Um, but one of the new technologies I saw was a laser, and I didn't look too deeply into the veracity of how effective or true this thing actually was, but there was some video demonstrations of this laser that was strong enough to trim palm leaves off of a palm tree from, a decent little distance away. So I thought that was pretty interesting to see. And I know I'm always fascinated by lasers like we talked about in the past, them maybe cutting off the wings of insects and things like that. But even if it's not new technology, anything new and exciting in the world of IPM.
Yeah, but let's welcome Tao in first. He just jumped in.
I did notice that. And without further ado, last and certainly not least, the American one.
Hello, Jack Panel and everyone in chat. I am the American one on the YouTube and the American one underscore with underscore 18s on the IG. It's always good to be here. And yeah, I'm glad I made it. Sorry I'm a little late.
Always happy to have you. And I just kind of teed up I mentioned a little technology about lasers cutting off palm trees leaves instead of using like a mechanical trimmer to go up there or like an extended pole with like a saw at the end or something like that. And I was passing it to Matthew because he just joined us and he's recently back from some IPM adventures. So we always like to see or hear if there's any new technology on the horizon or if any new cool updates or even the bad stuff. Is there any new pests or molds or mildews to start looking out for?
Well, the thing that I was interested in, some of the things I've talked about before, because they were just such a fan favorite. Like you guys have seen me talk about that drone, that the Pats S and the Pats C. Patsy being a bad word to use in English, but it's Dutch company. But yeah, the Pats C system that goes and finds moths with an IR sensor, and then takes a drone and goes and blows them up with the propeller. For those who haven't heard about that before, that's a cool thing that's been it's being seen in a lot of different crops, vegetable crops, flower crops, and I think that it has a lot of utility as well. Um, but generally, I was presenting about like the Everswarm concept I like to talk about, which for those who haven't come across it, if you're like a lot of people who watch us, I think are understanding of like the ecology and the importance of like not wrecking the environment. But beyond that, you can also make it work for you, and you can also, I think, appreciate that things are always going to change. So like what Jack is saying here is true, like to keep on the lookout. Is there something new coming up? Are there adaptations that are coming about, which I always like to talk about? Recently in the Netherlands, the last couple of years, there's been a pea aphid, which is not really a big problem in cannabis, but to illustrate this point, it's been really resistant to biocontrols, like parasitic wasps specifically, and also various chemicals, one of which is pymetrozine, which is in the news a lot lately as a pesticide and insecticide agent that is used for various insects, but oftentimes I hear it used for like root aphids and things like this because they can be so difficult for people to deal with and it's not tested for. So it's just an interesting parallel there because I'm not saying that and suggesting that people use this product, but I think that like the people who are getting away with it now are not going to be able to get away with it forever, not for ethical reasons, but for physiological ones. Perhaps you could say entropic reasons. Eventually, you're going to select away that weakness, especially with things like aphids. So that's kind of the main thesis of that presentation I gave. And I think that right now, currently, there are a bunch of new stuff coming in, a lot of leaf spotting fungi. I haven't been here a while, so I'll just like re-up on a few. There's the common ones people always get, but I think we're going to see a lot more fungal and bacterial like leaf pathogens and also like flower pathogens as well. Like for in cannabis, like fusarium, oftentimes associated with like roots and stems. We're seeing a lot more in the flower as a fusarium head blight, like we get in wheat. So we got to be careful about this kind of stuff.
It's important to mention and keep updated on, as you said, it is constantly changing. And I think 20, 30 years ago, no one was mentioning hop latent viroid. And in the last 5 or 10 years, it's been front of mind for almost all cannabis growers in the commercial markets because it's become common, identified, and it does have issues that it creates. And it might not be as immediate or direct and noticeable as like a spider mite invasion. However, it can ultimately hurt your crop as much or worse over time if it's not addressed and it is able to go unnoticed. And I think I saw as much as like 50% reduced yields in some cases, and the quality was also much lower. So it's something to, not get complacent and always keep our eyes open to try and avoid anything like that creeping up into our gardens. And if and when it does show up, being active to treat it in all the ways that are possible. And even like you were just mentioning, having certain things become resistant to predator mites is a new one for me because a lot of the time I would think like, how do you get resistant to being eaten, right? Or like stung? But I guess these, bugs or pests, they're smart. They don't want to get eaten or stung, so they figure out ways to either see them better, identify them better, or move more quickly, be more resistant to the sting. There's a bunch of different ways, or just have more babies or whatever. So if yeah, I might get killed off, but I had, twice as many babies because I knew that this predator was around and it can only kill X amount or whatever. There's so many different little tools in the toolbox of nature for these pests, both predators and pests to, go after the plant or go after each other. And it's a constant back and forth that I always love the engagement there. So I appreciate you giving us some updates and even the spotted leaf molds and things like that that people should look out for. And if they start to see it, try and learn to identify it and best way to treat it as quickly as possible. So thank you, Matthew, for that update for sure. And I'm curious, does anybody else on the panel have any thoughts, or is there anything IPM related that you've had going on in your gardens or seen in any gardens that you work with? I know a lot of us help newer growers and growers kind of all over the place. So this is kind of a time that we could maybe touch base on that.
I know for me, I put in my garden the tarantula predator, which is just UVC lighting for an IPM aspect. And, the good thing about that is I didn't have to change my IPM schedule. It was something I could just add to it, and it's actually reduced the amount I can spray. Um, not what I can't spray, reduce the amount that I have to spray because it helps with the IPM. So I usually, when it comes to flower, I'm only restricted to like the first week maybe of flower when I can put in like a Lost Coast plant therapy spray or something like that. And these lights help me extend that protection into the flower period almost as like a predator bug. That's kind of why they went with that name for the light. It's almost like a replacement.
You guys want to hear my IPM from
Yeah.
start to finish?
No.
Well, actually, mainly I would rather hear what have you been dealing with this year, this season, the last few months, or people that you're consulting. What are the common pests and molds? And then how are you combating that? Or if the IPM is so
He's
on
not,
point, you're
yeah,
not
he's not
facing it.
dealing with anything because he's got the IPM in place. That's
Well,
the
here's the thing. So you'll see things like a slight caterpillar damage, but then you'll go and see the caterpillar's dead, because it was infected by the BT. The grasshoppers and the leafhoppers this year were not nearly as bad because I went out and started spraying my property with Bavaria bassiana, before they, right during spring, right when they start hatching and everything. So I didn't have large insect pressure, but I saw small insect pressure of things like thrips. I saw some spider mites on the tomatoes. There was no mold or anything. There was a little bit of caterpillars, but all those things were able to be managed properly. I'm talking about my outdoor crop specifically is what I'm talking about. So no molds, no mildew, anything like that. Used the Bacillus subtilis, the trichoderma combo, so I didn't have any pathogen pressure. And there's only a couple plants left in my actual yard now. Some late finishers. Everything else got chopped and frozen. So, but what I like to do from start to finish, and the reason I do this on my travels, I was at a facility, a large commercial facility, and they had sent out all different types of plugs, like cloning media, from peat plugs, rock wool, different types of cocoa plugs, different like root riot plugs, and they all came back for microbial contaminants like pathogens. A lot of anaerobic bacteria, fusarium, aspergillus, a lot of bad shit. And so what I do at the very beginning is I sterilize all of my media no matter what I start in. And I usually use something like hydrogen peroxide or xylitol and let that media soak, rinse it out. That's the first thing I do. Whenever I take a clone off of a plant, I dip that plant in a solution, and I like to use Kiaha and Suff Oil X. That's like my favorite go-to combo, and that will help sterilize and protect, or not sterilize, but it'll protect that plant from pathogens and mildews. Um, Additionally, besides sterilizing the media, and then once that clone is rooted, I like to dunk them again. And then my regular IPM starts in veg, and I like to do a shorter veg time so that plants aren't exposed to a lot of time where they could be potentially, where they could potentially get a pest or a pathogen. But I'm using Sulfoylex and Kiaha or micronized sulfur in Kiaha for the canopy management because they're really effective and they're very inexpensive. And then I like to use for the media, I like to use the Microblyph BCM for fungus gnat control and Bavaria bassiana to drench the media with for insect pressure. If in the event that you get something like root aphids and they're starting and you can see them, I use Pyganic, which is chrysanthemum distillate. But that's pretty much it. It's pretty basic. I do like to use the Bacillus subtilis and Trichoderma. I'll inoculate the media and spray maybe 2-3 times in a cycle, and it seems to really help with suppressing any types of molds and stuff like that.
For a little while, I think you're doing like Bavaria Bassiana like every 4 days or something. Are you still on that game plan?
No, no. I mean, for preventative maintenance, maybe like once every 2 weeks. If there's visual insect pressure, you can increase that dosage. And the thing about Varia bassiana is because it is, a fungus, it's really hard to overdo, and you can like conventional pesticides, you can really overdo it and just mess things up. So
One thing I will say is I think people I also got similar interactions at that conference when I was talking with other folks as well. But it is like a super huge problem that people like. It's the thing I harp on a lot, but like Braden's talking about here, like having an option for some of these common things, and perhaps even having a bit of an idea of what could or couldn't work for the or new things or things that people don't have as much experience with, either in your region or in scientific literature at large. But like having that, doing that pre-gaming is like gonna, it really just, it'll separate you from like a catastrophic failure. And once you know your area, like I think again, not to put words in the mouth of Brandon here, but yeah, like things change once you have an idea of what your particular needs are. You might not even need to apply things preventatively as often. You can be more precise. That was a big, I think a
timing is
very big,
timing is huge, especially for
yeah,
outdoor out here, because
100%.
we have a pretty big insect pressure just naturally. If you have a nice green food source for insect eating, you know, pests. Plant eating pests, then it's just something you're going to deal with. But if you know what time they come, because I know what time that the leaf hoppers and grasshoppers emerge. I know what time all of the moths and caterpillars start laying eggs, like all
What
of
would you
those.
say that is for your area? Like
So
I just talked to Aaron about with grasshoppers, for example.
the beginning of spring here in Oklahoma, um you want to start hitting the I hit the yard and stuff like that. I go and hit the garden beds. I'll drench and I'll also spray. And I'll do that a couple times during the beginning of spring, and that has greatly reduced the insect pressure from that particular pest, which was a really bad issue the first time I grew.
Would you say, do you get a lot of budworms, and when do you get them?
Yes, so budworms, they usually come about like 3 4 weeks ago. So I would say
Yeah.
probably about the beginning of September, maybe late August is when you need to start spraying for that. At least where I'm at.
No, that's what I mean. It's different in different places. I finally got the audio done not 15 minutes before this presentation or this this session here for that big for abdominal abominable budworm presentation. So hopefully that'll come out soon. But that was a big stickler, was that like if you're in more temperate locations, it's different. If you're close to the equator, you get it pretty much constantly. And yeah, like in Oklahoma, it's interesting because it's within the reaches of like a budworm. I'm sorry, like the moth moving as far as it typically can go, which is like 750 kilometers. So that means that you can get them even potentially before overwintering. But I find that most people get like some of them, like they're not active getting into your buds, of course, before you have flowers. So it makes sense that it would be like in the autumnal range. But yeah, everywhere's a little different.
Well, during springtime, you'll see a emergence of all different types of insects, including moths.
Exactly. Yes.
However, at that particular point in time, you're not often going to see a lot of the damage because your plants are either not even been planted yet, or they're small.
Well, yeah, and the budworms don't go after foliage,
Not so much. I mean, they will, but
but not really.
no, they like all the ones that I found are just all brown and dying.
Good
Yeah,
to have
yeah,
good to have
yeah.
managed. And part of the reason I'm sort of going around the panel is to get these little regional updates. Like I'm gonna check in next with Noah the grower and see if he's been dealing with any insect pressure at all, either cannabis garden or even in the non-cannabis garden. I know you grow food and stuff outdoors, and if you're seeing anything, what is it, and how are you going about managing?
Yeah, so we have a lot of obviously vegetables, but we also have like strawberries, and I have like flowers and stuff, roses, different kinds of flowers, and I have noticed some insect kind of stuff. It looks kind of like thrip. So I'm like super paranoid about my actual room, but nothing in my room. I'm always helping out with other growers that come to me with questions and stuff that I know. It's usually thrip or spider mites or stuff like that, and try and get them on a decent IPM regiment and get them going, you know. But no problems in my current garden. Nothing outside that is unmanageable. Uh, but I'm always just like, you know, like you said, it's funny you say that because I'm always just looking around outside, kind of like using it as like a test run, just kind of like, you know, using it as, you know, plant scouting, just kind of just trying to learn as I'm doing different things outside to kind of take that into, you know, in the grower room. And I'll tell you one thing, I've gotten a lot better at plant scouting in my actual room. I probably set aside 5-10 minutes unless I'm in a big hurry almost every day to just plant scout in my veg and in my flower room. You know, I'm just constantly, you know, going over leaves and just looking at stuff. So I recommend other growers to do that as well.
It can save you not only from pests but from a herm where you got a pollen
Oh,
thrower.
absolutely.
If you catch it early enough, you can cut it out, where a lot of people just don't look closely enough or at their plants enough generally to pick something like that up. But identifying pests early is another great way to mitigate them. I'm glad to hear that you're not having to actively battle them. I know Tao's got some outdoor going on right now in terms of cannabis. I'm curious if you're seeing anything. Hopefully, it's going well for you over there. But if it is going smoothly, what's the IPM strategy? And if you've seen some pests, what are you running into?
Yeah, knock on wood. Basically, I've seen some spider mites, but I haven't done anything at all. But that's after I put them outside. When they were inside, I did spray them, I think, a couple times with some sulfur. Um, yeah, when they were younger. But after I put them outside, I let God take care of them, nature or whatever. And I've seen a couple holes, but there's not. I just searched them over. There's no like bugs crawling on them now or anything. But it has been raining for like the past 4 days here. Pretty constant, steady rain, and I haven't seen any rot yet. But I haven't dug too deep because, like, with my new spot, I don't want to be there like where somebody walking by could see me tending to it because yeah, it's not really right yet. But yeah, knock on wood. I'm not going to chop it early. I'm going to wait and make sure it's fully developed because I probably coming up, I might take a branch off just to make sure. But I'd rather have um, I'd rather throw away a couple branches and have some really good shit than to have a whole plant of immature cannabis. But that's just me. And if I had a whole like crop full, I'd probably take a couple plants already. But yeah, I'm gonna see how it goes.
I love that you're just doing a little low key, not too big, hidden in plain sight kind of thing. Because
Well, yeah, I had 7 females out there, and it was taking up probably like a 4 foot by 2 foot area. But then I killed all of them except for one, so that it wouldn't be like so flagrantly in your face. And then if God forbid anything would happen, I'd be like, I didn't even know that thing was there, man. Even though there's a couple of supports on it now.
that definitely hurts the I didn't know it was their argument, but at the same time, you never know. Somebody else could have came there and set it up. Ignorance and always keep quiet if you have a question about shit like that.
Yeah,
Talk to my lawyer.
never admit to guilt or anything.
I 100% agree.
Yeah.
But legal BS aside, unfortunately, that there still are states like where Tao is at that you have to worry about hiding it, and not just because your neighbor might come take it, because you can end up locked up over it. It's or with some sort of charges. It's crazy to think because
Yeah,
someone.
I would think though. Now in the next 5 years, every state is going to have some sort of like, well, right? It has to happen in 5 years from today.
Well, I
We might
never
not
thought
get
20 years ago, I never thought it would happen. And now it's like I'm convinced that it's definitely going to happen eventually, but I'm not holding my breath. But
right.
so it's one of those things. Laws are interesting and they take time to change. And I think generally they've been moving in the positive direction, but
Yeah,
nothing's perfect.
yeah, and I just mean eventually they'll all have to have recreational of some sort, but that doesn't mean we're gonna be able to put plants anywhere. I mean, a few states have recreational with no homegrown, which would be a total.
Like I can't grow outdoors. I can
That's
grow,
ridiculous.
but I have to grow
Hey,
indoor.
that's ridiculous too. I thought California was a hippy dippy love state where you don't want to be using lights. Use
Exactly.
yeah,
Well, and you'd also think that there'd be more like, I mean, I'm not saying I want a bunch of corruption in the government, but you think that people would see like the money. I mean, they're extracting through taxes like terrible, like just invidious amounts of capital that they don't really deserve. But
Our company makes money on the
yep,
electricity if they force you to grow
100%.
inside. And so
100%. That's true too.
67% of counties have banned outdoor and greenhouse cultivation. And they always say like think of the children and they try and do all that other
Sure.
BS, right? It's scare tactics and propaganda and corruption and profit motives. So there's a
You
lot
just
of
think that they'd support like more commercial and home grow. Like, I don't know.
yeah, it's sad, but you're like I've seen how much money they can make off of the market, and it like Vista is a changed city over the last 10 years. Vista, California. I've
I have to agree with you. Even like right north of us.
yeah, it's
Yeah, this
it
has
is
definitely changed.
over like 10 to 20 years it has completely changed, and many would say I think for the better, but I don't know. It's tough to say that any city would want to say no to like an extra $8 million a year for
Exactly.
whatever they can use that to benefit. Like from apartments to the trees down the streets to the actual streets, like the less potholes, and it's certainly improved their town. So I get why they try to extract as much tax as possible. But um, that aside, I hope, like Tao was saying, that it's going to be within the next few years that everybody can not worry about being arrested for it at least, and be able to grow at least a couple in your little area as long as you're not too out of hand. But there's going to be that back and forth with the home grower and the market because most home growers may just be growing for themselves or a few other people, but some people will be the person who has a acre in their backyard and they're growing thousands of plants and getting thousands of pounds, and that becomes something that does cut into the profits of these companies. And then, not saying that they shouldn't be able to make their money. Everybody should be able to grow it and sell it and make their money. I think just like we can farm our own potatoes or tomatoes or whatever and compete against the big guy if you want to try. Um, but yeah, it's not a perfect situation, I'll say that for sure. But to get back to growing an IPM, I'm curious. I think we went all the way around the horn. Noah, Brandon, Tao, Spartan gave us a little bit of an update. Did you have any more to share there, Spartan?
No, I don't have outdoor going this year. So as far as pest pressure goes, I haven't had anything new show up.
I was gonna
Always
say
nice.
earlier when Noah was talking about, I also think about it with you or anybody who has an outdoor garden, cannabis or otherwise, they can sort of act as I think it's called a sentry plant or something like that, where
Yeah.
you see the pest on those plants before it gets into your indoor garden. It's like, oh, I know that thrips are around because I see them outdoor on my plumeria or something. It's like that's Western flower thrips or whatever, and that can get on my cannabis, so I have to be careful. And I don't actually have them, but that was an example. Like when my wife was working at this hotel, they had thrips on their flowers and it's she brought one home like wearing it in her ear and I was like I looked at it and there was like a thrip crawling out. I was like, holy shit, this is not don't get near the garden with that, but it can be something that innocent, right? Like as
And fresh produce too. People always like that one. Yeah.
Yeah,
Berries,
for
blackberries,
me,
raspberries, strawberries.
yeah, mulberries too. Mulberries are huge with
Oh
thrips.
yeah.
That's where I see most of my thrips is mulberries for the season.
I
Yeah,
feel like
definitely.
that can be like a source of even like fungus gnats or maybe fruit flies. I don't know if those are even in the same category, but sometimes. But generally, I feel like that only happens when people are overwatering or not managing the soil conditions properly. I was trying to think of the last pest I had to deal with, and other than bringing clones in from fucking unreputable sources, I haven't had to
See?
deal with any of them. And even now, like growing plumeria and other stuff outside, it's been, I mean, we get like ants, but they're not necessarily going after what I'm growing. They're just more doing their thing, uh, sugar and some things from the soil or whatever, but they're not necessarily a huge threat. I know a lot of people think that they, and rightfully mention the aphid husbandry, I think is what it's referred to as, where the ants can essentially take the aphids onto the plant to help them, you know, tag team and get more of a beneficial effect from the plant where they can, I think there's the aphid allows it some honeydew or something like that. I can't remember the exact term, but Matthew might be able to clarify a little bit here for me. But
No, you're right. You've said everything right.
yeah, it's just interesting that sometimes you see something and it can be a problem, and then sometimes you see something and it's not a problem at all. So it makes it even more difficult when it comes to IPM because it's like that thing, an ant is very wide. You know, there's fire ants, there's leafcutter ants, there's like a whole bunch of different categories of ant even. So we can get deep, deep down the IPM rabbit holes, but thankfully I've been fortunate to not have to be dealing with too much. Um, some of the stuff I feel like most growers I'm seeing deal with are molds and mildews, usually in the grow from too much humidity, I think, and lack of air movement and circulation. And post crop, getting their stuff in the jars too wet, and then getting back to it before they let enough of that humidity out, and then getting like post rot in their jars and things like that. So preventable, but it is easy enough to happen because we're operating in moist environments with live organic materials, and molds and mildews are also fans of those environments that our plants and things tend to thrive and do well in. But if we monitor it well enough, I think in the growth and harvest and drying, it's one of those things that can be and should be prevented because ultimately it does lead to mycotoxins and other issues like that. So to be honest, the topic I wanted to talk about at the start of the show, unless anybody else has more
Yeah,
thoughts on
I got a
IPM.
question. I have a question for Matthew, pretty much. So, and in conjunction with Spartan and GML's new device there, I was thinking about you could just have UV light or whatever the killing light is at all the entry points in a facility. But my question is, do most spider mites and pests get to the grow from the air, or do they crawl on the ground somehow into the place, or is it
I
on a
think that the
human
most
being?
common, I think it's most common on a fomite, so something that vectors it. So that's either
Okay,
a person or perhaps like I mean, but of course, if you don't take things in, then like I would have to say that probably people get them on plant material most, or it's
right,
plant material that's near wherever they're growing, or somehow on equipment kind of ancillary to that. Spider mites do catch wind, and in fact, Persimmilus mites do too.
okay,
But you know, it's a lot more difficult if they don't have like a straight shot.
right.
For sure,
So
for sure, for
if
sure.
They can
mostly,
ride the backs of fungus gnats on your plants too. I mean,
yeah,
I'm
we
sure that's
saw
rare, but
that.
I've seen pictures.
Yeah,
Spider mites wouldn't be able to do that.
not on the fungus gnat, other fly. They have a picture of a fly with gnats. Like,
That's the white fly. Yeah, the white fly and the broad mite, I think you're thinking
yeah.
of. Yeah,
All
that's
right.
pretty
So
incredible to me.
but it wouldn't be that effective. It wouldn't help much if you just like had all at the very floor, it's like you wouldn't be able to touch human skin unless you were barefoot. Having those UVC lights that kill everything, at every entryway or something, but that wouldn't be it wouldn't even stop it then. So
Well, like yeah, if you like shielded it, right? Somehow. Like if it was on plants and you like had them in like a bag or something, then like
I think
is
those
that
wind tunnels are pretty effective for a lot of the pests that might be able to come in on people or objects.
for UV, a big part of it is dosage. So how much contact time does the light have? And is there some sort of mitigating factor? Um, Fun fact for spider mites, you might have seen some that have different colors, and the ones that have like red have an increased carotenoid content in their body, which protects them a lot from ultraviolet radiation. Now, you know, a light fixture that applies it, like a clean light or sterile light, or any of these other lights that are out there, they've been around a very long time. Um, you know, those are going to be much more powerful than what is naturally produced, right? But it's also potentially going to damage the plant if you were to leave it on longer or something like this. And it's kind of like coverage is the same concept as with chemistry. So You want to make sure that you actually get direct contact. Otherwise, efficacy is going to be a lot less. And they do have behavioral reactions to like the UV light outside, like going on underneath the leaves and things like that. So you have to ensure that you get enough photons on contact, I guess.
And I just want to stress too, when you're dealing with UVC, no matter what the source, no matter what the fixture, treat it with respect, because UVC not only does it hurt bugs, it can hurt humans just as well, especially our eyes, things like that. So don't do
Very
things like I
quickly.
want to, yeah, don't do
Very
things like I want
quickly.
to peek in the room and see if the lights are on. Use your,
Yeah.
if you have to do that, use a video camera in there or a phone or something. Don't put your eyeballs at risk, please.
Any part of your body, honestly, you don't want to be by it.
Yeah. 100%. And that's why, like, also with like plants too. Like, I'm pretty sure I've shared on this podcast, uh, research that showed UVB, I believe, used against like powdery mildew on strawberries, I believe it was, and botrytis too. And like, yeah, the dosage time, I forget the joules or whatever, but it was like 15 seconds or
Yeah,
something,
I
like
saw as
in
low
the
as 4
experiment.
seconds, I think.
Yeah.
In
Yeah,
like
it
a
was to get like 90% plus spore death. Now, spores are different than like when it's actually gotten into the plant, right? So like I think it's always important to talk, I think, probabilistically and not like with certitude, especially if like you don't have like a good SOP or you're not using some sort of system to make sure that you get the good coverage. But UV lights have been incredibly effective over decades. So yeah, that's some technology that's been around.
I had something I was curious, Matthew. I wanted to follow up with you. I saw iCine said spider mites can repair their DNA with blue light, and I was curious if you had any knowledge about that, because that just sounded
Yeah,
interesting.
I'm not sure what's being referred to there. Uh, I know that they have a very, very, very small genome, and up until the tomato russet mite was sequenced, the smallest animal genome, I believe, was spider mite, two-spot spider mite. But they might also it's also possible. I know that some I forget. I think spider mite be one of them, and the pea aphid too. They have like a not it's not photosynthesis, but they can actually derive some like energy, like metabolic energy, I think, from like light hitting some pigmentation. I think there are some hornets as well that have this ability too. So maybe they're referring to that. I'm not sure.
They said DNA caused by UV can be repaired with blue light, and I would just have to see. He said most mites avoid UVB. You can use it to steer the pests away
Oh
and
yeah,
slow replication.
I saw a message earlier. They're saying that they hang their mites under a canopy UVB. They said the mites hide in the lowers and the UVB pushes the thrips down. That's not really. I can't say that I'm familiar with this like logical reasoning about how UV works or how the insect behavior works. I'd be curious from where they're sourcing that particular statement. But you
The
shouldn't
Dutch do it
use
on
UV.
booms.
Exactly. You shouldn't use UV with the predatory mites though. Like you're gonna kill them. Like they mentioned they don't have eyes. That's true. But they often don't have a good protection system for UVB. It's pretty lethal.
It's a good tool in the toolbox, and I think it's cool to see at scale, like the Dutch, as Barton mentioned years ago, out of necessity because of restrictions on pesticide use. They implemented booms with different forms of UV that would sweep over the entire crop, and they've actually increased output in many cases. So they've been able to manage despite difficult circumstances. And there's a lot of really impressive greenhouse cultivation all over the world if you look into it. It's fascinating the resources that people are and governments even are expending to create, more food and plant growth for their countries and even for export. So really amazing stuff. And yeah, but on the smaller scale, I'd say one of the things I was thinking about as I have been growing plumeria is when I grew this plumeria, it's like it grew really well and I didn't use anything fancy like you know, my M3 soil or like a soil from Build a Soil or Bokashi Earthworks or anything. Like cannabis specific. I just went to the big box store locally and I got, I think, two whatever for $10. And it's organic or whatever, and it's locally sourced or whatever. And I looked at the ingredients and it's decent. There is like the forest bark or whatever, and some cheaper ingredients and things like that. But they also had some of the things that I would like to see in there, pumice and things like that for aeration, and a lot of the organic like composts and different things that I would want to see included. Long story short, the plumeria grew incredibly well and not so fancy, really inexpensive soil. And it kind of got me to thinking, how budget can you actually go? Like box store versus hydro store, or local garden center, and like even my local garden center has like a 420 soil, which I thought was kind of funny. It's like a smaller bag and more expensive. And when I look at the ingredients, recipe or whatever, um, it's similar to another from that same company that makes soil or whatever. They sell a cheaper, much larger bag that's just like not 420 branded, and it's like almost looks like the exact same thing, just rebagged and marketed towards the cannabis thing, just like with a lot of nutrients and just like with a lot of other products in the cannabis space and marketed towards or around the cannabis space. So Spartan mentioned a few weeks back, I think, how when he would run out of a certain input, that he would then say, "Oh, I'm going to go without it for a little while and see like how much do I actually need it." And it got me to thinking like how budget can you actually go? And have you guys ever tried like the, local garden center soils or non-special soil and done like side by sides and things like that?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, I've grown just right in my soil that I can just go outside with a shovel and dig it up out of my backyard, throw it in there, and just re-amend. I've had to do that before. So depending on where you are financially, sometimes you just got to make do with what you got. I've definitely done that. But I mean, obviously there's reasons why I use the different inputs and things like the media that I do now, like because I get better results with them than going out to the backyard and making that work. But that's still a viable option if you have to. It's way more viable than not growing.
It's funny because like whether it's cannabis or plumeria, like my wife and I went to a plumeria festival and this guy was walking by and I was thinking about picking this one variety and he's like, "Oh, I got that last year and it didn't really do well." And I said like, "Did you transplant it?" And like I was asking him like, questions that I would ask a cannabis gardener like if they had an issue. And he's like, "No, I didn't. I just kind of kept it in that pot, or maybe I put it in like a 1 gallon pot or something small." And I was like, "Maybe if you transplant it, like give it a little bit more space or whatever, and use a certain type of soil that drains well, it might do better, over time." And it's just it can be that simple or whatever, but sometimes, like you're saying, you do get much better results with higher quality inputs. And I do certainly believe that, the main reason I would like to go to a Bokashi Earthworks or a Build a Soil or like an M3 is they have no heavy metals. They are clean inputs where I'm not so confident that the local box store is going to go through the same sourcing of inputs that Jeremy at Build a Soil or Brandon at Bokashi Earthworks or whoever you like Swan at M3 would go through to provide the highest quality medicinal cannabis that they can. Not to say that you can't also grow high quality cannabis in the box store. So I think that I'm going to do like a start in a 1 gallon or a solo cup, go to a 1 gallon, and then maybe finish in like a 3 or a 5, and maybe do like a either a side by side or like a three-way kind of battle of, like a build a soil, whatever their main soil is, against
Are you talking about with cannabis or what are we talking about?
with cannabis, yeah. Like on my next
Okay.
grow or upcoming grow. Maybe get a cut off of I'll do my regular thing on my next run, find my favorite Project V from Spartan and grow 3 cuts of that same plant in 3 different soils and see what the results are like in the box store soil, in the build a soil, and in the, whatever other third thing that I decide to, I don't know, do the side by side with. And it's less out of a
Well,
necessity, more just out of like a fun citizen science, having fun to see how budget you can go and still get maybe a decent result, or how bad the result is if you decide to maybe skimp on certain things.
for your third one, I would go with that bag soil you said that's looks exactly like that 420 soil, but it's a little bit cheaper. I'd go with that. See how that
It's not a bad
goes.
choice. Yeah, that's from a different garden center. I'll have to go by there. One of my neighbors works over there. It's a good spot. I got good seed starting soil from that garden center, and it just opens my eyes that maybe not everything needs to be ordered online. You can pick up a lot of stuff in person. I was guilty of, especially during like the pandemic time, of just order it online, have it dropped off to my house, and so yeah, it's fun to see how much you can get away with for how little, whether it's a native soil like you just dug into your ground or whatever your local box store or local garden center has.
Yeah, I grew for years and years and years using Pro Mix, straight up Pro Mix, nothing added, and freaking advanced nutrients. And had I known better, I probably could have just used Miracle Grow. It would have been probably just as close. But I think you could get great growth from that setup, but I do believe that a discerning palate would taste the difference depending on the other way that it was grown. And for biomass, yeah, Miracle Grow is probably great.
It sketches me out though, like some of like the OG throwback Miracle, like the blue dyes and like the different colors. And I get they have that in a lot of the um, you know, fertilizers that are used in hydroponics, etc. But I'm curious. I know Noah the Grow has tried a whole bunch of different stuff, and I'm curious like how budget you've gone with it. I know you used to do like Fox Farm, Ocean Forest, and you've tried a whole bunch of different stuff and everything in between. How budget do you think you can get away with growing the dank?
Well, okay, so when I first started, I didn't know any better, and I used to go to Kroger and get like their black gold all-purpose soil, and then I switched to actually it was Happy Frog because Happy Frog had you could get 2 liters instead of one. You got like a half, another extra half, whatever the measurement is. It was like 25% more, and it was the same cost. And they had some like humic stuff in it and a few different little inputs that were pretty cool. For a budget bag of soil, Ocean Forest is pretty decent. And I used to get it for 10 bags for $100 bill. I knew the guy that owned the local hydro store, and that was his deal. And like literally, like dude, I remember then right after the pandemic, it jumped 130. Right off the bat, jumped 30%. So, but before that, for that whole time, I used to get it. And then right after the pandemic, same thing. I just was online, found a company. They sent me like 10, 20 different bags of soil, 2 different kinds. I tried it, and then I just ordered a pallet. And I've been just off of that. And some of it I reuse and just different things, but re-amend it and stuff. But yeah, no, it just depends on what your local, you know what I mean, you can get, like you said. But I mean, if you're in a hydro store, I mean, most hydro stores are going to have Ocean Forest, Fox Farms. It's been a little while since I bought it, but the last time I think I bought it was like 13 or 14 a bag. Because sometimes I'll actually buy it for like my mom to like use for her like flowers or like someone for like, she's like, oh, this and that. Because I don't want to give her my more expensive living soil bags. So yeah, I do that. And I've been experimenting with actually taking all the old like soil that I don't do, the root balls, and I'll sprinkle just a very, very little bit of like I'm trying to think like the down to earth amendment I use. I sprinkle a little bit of that, and then
BioLive?
yeah, BioLive. Yep, BioLive. I have the box right over here. I'll sprinkle a little bit of that, and then I'll sprinkle just a little bit. I try to just do just a little bit of biochar, and then I'll take like all the leaves from my tree and put it on top of it, and then just let it sit for a couple of years. And then I also put root balls on top of that. And then I've been just kind of using that for like to give to my mom, and it doesn't have like you know what I mean, like because it's stripped of most of the nutrients, but it's better than the experiment that I've been using is better than if like you were just trying to use that old soil. So
For
I've been just
sure.
experimenting and cheap home grow, you know what I mean? And I
That's what
got
it's all about.
access to it, so I mess
That's why
around a
I'm
little
asking.
bit. Yeah,
I love that.
totally,
I love this topic, and this is literally
absolutely.
what our show's all about. And I think it makes it fun to see like how well you can grow plants with really basic budget stuff. I remembered earlier I said two, but my measurement I didn't remember. It was 2 cubic feet for $10. And this soil, I don't want to shout out the name or whatever. It's not going to be available for everybody. But I was shocked at how good the plumeria smells that I'm growing. And I'm like, if the plumeria smells this good, I'm sure some cannabis, if you grow it in here, could produce some pretty decent smells. And it's all about taking good care of the plant, watering it properly, and ensuring that the soil has, what you need. And in your case, like you're talking about with the used soils, they're not like eating that plant or smoking that plant. It's just like around their house to look nice or something like that. So just to keep it alive is a much less tall task than trying to grow like your 9 or 10 out of 10 A grade bud. So it's nice to be able to put that soil to a second use. A lot of people go through the re-amending process, myself included, but it also makes sense to, I think, start with a fresh bag each time. Like if they have a good recipe or good mix that works for you, and you can put the old soil to use. It's not like you're throwing it away. You're ultimately saving it for future use. And by adding even just the leaves and other things like that, you're charging it back up in the BioLive, which has a whole bunch of different really good stuff in there. So by doing that, you're producing a second life for that soil, which I think ultimately is a great use of resources and benefits you and your family. So good on you, Noah, for that. I think it's a great, way to keep the budget lower and also still get great results. So cheers to you. And I'm curious if Brandon has any thoughts on using like the big box store stuff. I know you used to provide, so I looked at your website recently and I saw that it maybe is out of stock, and maybe that's something because of shipping costs. You maybe encourage people to mix their own. I know like the Coots mix is popular. There's Subcool, Super Soil, and so many other great mixes. You've got some videos out there, Brandon. I've talked to my family members and friends who have had great results with them. So I'm curious your thoughts on this matter.
Well, I do sell soil still. I just selling 2 cubic foot bags direct to consumer through the mail. It's a little bit challenging logistically. So that's been the issue. So I mainly sell pallets, super sacks, and bulk. Um, I should probably just put that on the website. Just be like, bam, here's the soil, here's what a pallet costs, here's the super sack. And I think I have um, a couple different mixes and stuff, a couple different blends. But that's what I use in my garden is like the Bokashi mix. And the reason why it's important to look at, tests for your soil is because oftentimes store bought and even like um, some of the like bigger name brands, they actually lack a lot of things. Like they might be high in NPK, so you might be able to start off all right, but they'll lack things like calcium and magnesium, sulfur, and micronutrients. And so, um, if you can find something that's like kind of a cheap substrate, I think it would be best to do something um, like that pro mix where it's like perlite and peat or like a cocoa or like a buffered cocoa where you can add in some like micronutrient sulfates, a little bit of that, and some like calcium and phosphorus, stuff like that, and just really make sure you have enough elements in that soil. It's if you're growing house plants and stuff, I'll just go buy cheap bag soil if I don't have any of my soil available. I'll go buy some of that, like you said, that two organic, 2 cubic foot bag at Walmart or whatever. But again, that stuff usually doesn't contain the proper ratio of nutrients or enough unless you're gonna add it yourself.
One thing I also notice when it comes to that, big box store soil versus what I would consider like a can of soil is the consistency. There's a lot less like big like wood chips and like chunks and things like that in the can of soil. They're more like finely screened, even sizes like the perlite or pumice or whatever is a similar size almost throughout the whole bag. And the, you know, uh, scale of the media is very consistent. Where the bag soil, as I pour it out, there's big clumps, there's huge bark chips and things like that here and there, and you can pull them out or break them down or do whatever you prefer to. Maybe throw it in the compost pile if it doesn't fit well with the rest of the soil. But that is one thing that I certainly did notice. Um, I will say the organic one I got here locally is a lot better than where even like Ohio, where I'm at, was a pretty big agricultural area. There's like tons and tons of nurseries all around. And it's interesting to see the difference in quality because like even at the big box store like a Lowe's or a Home Depot, I notice here in Southern California, there's brands that, and maybe it's a big national brand that I don't know that's just rebagging it or whatever, but it seemed really more like something I see out here in Southern California, but I didn't see in Ohio. And they're probably similar in nature, you know. But yeah, it was just interesting to read through the different mixes because even though there was, I don't know, 5, 6, 10 different organic, 2 cubic feet of bag soils, I went through each one and kind of eyeballed like which one of these things looks the most like what I would build myself in terms of the starting media and things like that. And there's also, if you want to get your hands dirty, you can go the whole kind of Coots mix method or a subcool super soil method and buy the individual parts and put it all together, the peat and the, compost and everything like that, the vermicastings and things like.
Yeah.
Yep.
Speaking of Subcool, I understand his passing or his birthday was either today or yesterday. So I just want to do a shout out to Subcool. Yeah, every single offering he put out to the public was legit. And if nothing else, I respect him for that for sure. So yeah, shout out to Subcool.
Big fan of his work. He's in both 50 strains of green and going to be in 50 strains of purple as soon as I finish it up. I'm getting closer. I know I keep on saying that. Like Matthew and many others who are working on stuff. It takes time, but I'm really happy to be able to get a lot of that done. And it's fun, a lot of fun to recall the memories and things like that of his strains and, reflect back on his work because I agree with you. Everything that I had from him, I was a huge fan of. Uh, One of my only regrets was I didn't get into like the vortex while he was alive. I got so hooked on the Jack the Ripper and that side of the tree that I sort of missed out. And then when I started looking more into it after his passing, and even just like hearing Spartan and other stories, like there's just only so much room in my garden, and I don't know, I like what I like, and sometimes didn't venture out enough. But I'm really happy to have that Project V. Thank you to Spartan, and that's the Vortex F2 for those out there who aren't aware. But yeah, RIP to Subcool. I'm not sure if it was his passing, probably his birthday. I can't remember. I think I thought he passed in like February like 1st or something like that, or like January 31st, but I could be wrong. It's been smoking that good today, and sometimes it makes my brain a little cloudy in terms of the memory, but oftentimes I think
Well,
it helps.
here's a good transition. Seed Person 1 sent me some seeds. We could talk about that.
As you should. I also got some from them.
Oh, do you think you got the same ones?
I believe so. I believe Goth Girl.
Yeah.
I will say because I think Seed Person One might be in the chat. Maybe not.
I got
But
some too.
I got some too.
look at
Oh,
that
good.
You know, dude.
I also got some.
whole panel getting hooked up. Towers sitting over
Well
there like,
then,
hmm.
hmm. Pays to know people tap.
I'm sitting over here
Jeez.
looking for the mute button. But yeah, of course. The C Person One is an awesome dude. Shout out to C Person One. And not just everyone on the panel. He gave them out to tons of people, and he's on a
Yes, that's
mission.
right.
And his name is befitting. Seed Person. Awesome.
Seed Person.
The story I really love. Just like he's really truly a seed person. Like loves popping seeds and loved even the stickers and stuff like that. The little Seed Person One logo. I got it over here on my little TV stand and my other little sticker collection area. So shout out to you, Seed Person One. Really appreciate that. They were labeled with like the strains. One of mine was an auto, and one of them was a cross of 2 different strains. I've got them in the Curador over there. But I
Yeah,
think
I got
go ahead.
it was the same ones as Lilac Diesel crossed with Banana, which is the Autofem. Stay here. Sherpa Slippers, which is cement shoes crossed with Weichen, purple, Photo Reg, and Al Hind. I'm going to pronounce it that way, Photo Reg, and that's uh Sherbergen and crossed with Weichen purple. And then Goth Girl, which is apparently Platinum Float crossed with Green Crack, which is then crossed with Nightmare Cookies. Math.
All the genetics, it's crazy. Going
Yeah,
back through the lineages.
if you look at the photos of that goth girl on his Instagram, she's a looker, man, for sure.
Yeah.
AI was a mistake.
I just hit my Chem D's that I got from P-Bud with my Black Lime Reserve because I was out in Michigan recently. I was talking to Leo from Aficionado, and he was telling me the story of the Chem Dog Special Reserve, which is Black Lime Reserve Chem Dog.
It's
But
fire.
I asked him about it, and he said that the male was actually a Chem Dog cross. So it was a Chem Dog cross to something else, and then they used that male on the Black Lime Reserve. And so it's not just Chem D Black Lime Reserve or Chem and Black and BLR. So I was like, all right, cool. Well, I'm gonna do the Chem D with my BLR male, which is the male that I've done all of my breeding work with the on the BLR side. So I know it's a solid male. And then I also hit it with the onto the sour OG. So I'll be able to do well, it'll probably be a little while, probably, I don't know, maybe like 6 months before I get to pop them, but I'm going to do a bunch of sour stuff. I'm still finishing up well, not finishing up, I'm halfway through the Blueberry Train Mac F2 project to do I did a F3 on some line work, but I'm going to do more F3s to F4s. And that's going to take up the rest of the year and probably like 4 months.
Any goals or traits that you're looking to isolate on F3 going to the F4?
Well, I already found a pheno, which is the crinkle cut that expresses the right terpene profile, which is this sweet vanilla cream blueberry with a kind of lemon back end. It's very sweet and creamy. It's a beautiful profile. However, it's not. It's like an outlier almost on the F2s because I did an open pollination on the F2s. So I'm just running through multiple pheno hunts. I'll do a total of four, and I selected different cuts out of each hunt. So the first two I got the crinkle cut and the skunk cut, and then this time I have some cuts that lean a little bit more towards the Mac V2 side. Um,
Can you say
and
that across one more time? Because OG was asking about it. Shout out to you, OG
it's
in Canada.
blueberry.
He's the
It,
the skunk was what he was interested, but cool shit.
it's blueberry train Mac, so it's train wreck blueberry cross to Mac V2. And so some of them lean a little bit more on that like sweet Mac side. Some of them get the terpenoline, but I'm just trying to find a specific one, and I'll just keep. I know it's in there, that perfect one that has the structure, the everything with that profile. The one that I have now, it's great. It's great plant, grows nice, but it just doesn't get really dense. The bud structure, it's very open. I mean, it's very like frosty too, so it'll do well for hash. But I'm looking for flower.
So hang on to that one just in case, because it's tough sometimes. Even when you get it, you breed it to something denser, you lose a little bit of that flavor or that high or that potency or whatever that made it
Back
special.
take that F3 that I made with it and take a male and hit it back to that female.
I love
Um,
that in
uh,
cross
I,
type stuff. That's a good way to lock down and isolate traits pretty quickly. Even like a lot of people are working self lines, S1, S2s when they find a unique pheno to try and get it stabilized in a seed form in some way. But even that I think is a can be a little bit of a like 1 out of 10, 2 out of 10
yeah,
maybe
me and Green
numbers.
Bodie are gonna drop a seed line next month. It's gonna be two different Afghani Bull Rider crosses. It's Afghani Bull Rider 89 NL, and that is the 89 NL from Jaime Chiba. And let's see, that's gonna be regular, and then we'll have this other drop, which is Afghani Bull Rider times Hazy Kush, and that one's gonna be a feminized line.
Hazy Kush is so fire. I was working at a dispo and that was like one of the top movers and I was one of the top people who picked it up because I had a little employee discount and it was good medicine for me and the wifey. He had a bunch of crosses with that one too. And yeah, Hazy Kush from Green Bodie. He's an interesting dude. Great strains. I've got a pillow behind me that I don't know if he made this strain. I think he did a cross with it, but Golden Pineapple was another one that we were getting from Green Bodie back in those days. But some really good stuff. He does some Affy work too, like old Afghanis crossed into that pineapple as well. So cool
I have
stuff,
some
man.
of his Purple Hindu Kush times Afghan one frozen in my freezer.
Sounds good. Is it flour or is it already made into hash?
Not flour. I'll have it washed next week when I get back from North Dakota.
Do you have a go-to person, or do you have a handful of them?
Well, I wanted Ginger Larf to do it, but he doesn't have his own lab anymore. He's working at another, so he can't do anything that like. So I'm just doing like my outdoor. It's not like it's not metric.
Starts getting complicated. The old
No,
relation. It's funny because
I just go to my other. I just go once my other homeboy's gonna do it. He has his own lab.
there's always somebody out there willing
Yep,
and able.
if
That's
it
the
makes.
beauty. How are things in Oklahoma generally? Would you say the cannabis scene is still doing well? Is it on the rush? Is it on the downfall? Is it
A lot
stabilizing?
of people are dropping out. A lot of licenses for sale. The market is leveling out because of all the changes that were implemented. But it also means that there's a lot less good quality, which means that good quality weed is starting to go back up in price. And I'm also going to be owner of a dispensary grow here pretty soon. My friend that owns Cush Hills, they were looking to open up another spot, and we found this like 2,500 square foot building. It's not huge, but it's big enough to put in a small grow, a little nursery. It literally has everything we need to do a small grow and a dispensary in front. And so overhead super low. It's only like $1,450 a month. It's in a good location. So we're probably gonna pull the trigger on that.
Nice, man. I'm really happy for you. And Noah did say he's just going to be with us for the first hour, and we've taken 7 minutes past that. So I just wanted to pass it to Noah and see if that's still the case. And if so, you can get your final thoughts and shout outs in before you get running.
Yeah, I'll do a couple more minutes, but yeah, I'll do my final shout out right now. Yeah, I'm Noah the Grower on Instagram. I do want to shout out Seed Person One. They did give me some seeds as well, and I appreciate that. And yeah, if anybody has any questions about what I got going on, you can check me out on Instagram. And maybe I'll just flash my room here for a second. You can have it in the background. I'll be on for another 5 or so minutes, and then I'll just check out. You guys have a great show the rest of the way.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, I actually have to go. I need to get in my garden and then finish packing for my trip tomorrow morning. So I'll see
Real
you
quick
guys.
before you go, how's the home grow scene doing? Is it still holding up? Are there still people popping seeds and growing some dang for themselves in
Oh, I
Oklahoma?
mean, still got my. I have so much weed right now of my own that I was like, well, I don't even really need to cultivate right now for like personal smoke or anything. So I'm gonna fish out this run and just do projects in there for a while.
Sounds like a good plan. It's always good to have more than you need. You can always gift it or, enjoy the smoke over time. Throw it in something climate controlled and it stays good for a long time. Long past the 1 year metric claims it's expired. Noah's Garden's looking beautiful over there. And
I'll see you guys
Brandon,
later, bro.
you want to give any final shout outs? Let the people know where they can find you.
Yeah, well, if you're interested in any of those blueberry train mac cuts from the last selection, they're up on the Bokashi Seed Vault website. And also, we're having a 25% off sale on the Bokashi Earthworks website just for like 2 more days. You can use code SAVE now, save 25% off. But other than that, I'll catch you guys soon.
Thank you for joining us. Greatly
Later,
appreciate it.
Brandon. Later, Noah.
Go on,
Later,
Brandon.
Much
later,
appreciated,
guys.
guys. Have a good one. Always good hanging with them. Getting a little update on the commercial and home grow scene over there in Oklahoma. Brandon getting into the dispensary game himself. It'd be nice for him to have a little bit of representation on the storefront side of things because when you grow it yourself, whether in the home grow or commercial market, I think a lot of the time the quality can get degraded while it goes to distribution and to the store. If it sits on the shelf too long, if it's not properly managed, if it doesn't get sold through soon enough, the quality might be a 8 or 9 out of 10 when it is harvested. But by the time it makes it to the customer, it might be a 5 or 6. So it's come down quite a ways. And ultimately, there's ways to go around that. And the more you have sort of vertical integration, the better you can get good quality product to the customer quickly.
Jack, I met the owner of Canatrol
Oh, that's
at the
interesting. I know that
conference.
we've got some fans. We've got Smart Poker and another listener mentioned that they got one recently and they've been enjoying it. What did you think about meeting the owner? Did you take away any interesting insight?
Yeah. So I guess for those who don't know, I they had a they used to work in like dried and cured meats and cheeses. I guess that's a big part of their marketing, it seems like. And I guess about 15 years ago, they created the basically the same kind of technology, and it allowed them to allow people who dry aged these products to be pretty successful. And I asked him during his presentation in the Q&A a question about the the dew point, the reduction in water activity of unbounded water, so like moisture outside on the plant material. Because putting it below, I want to say it was, yeah, this magnitude is important, but I think it was 0.06, 0.04, or something like that. It might not have been the zero there, but basically it allows the moisture level to be so low that like spore germination and that kind of thing for various microbes and the carrying out of their processes is heavily inhibited. Um, so they did the same thing with these products that they did with cannabis, and so the natural progression of offering it for people in cannabis space made itself apparent, and I guess that's how they came across it. So yeah, I mean, it definitely made a lot of sense because it's true that relative humidity, and you've probably heard me throw around absolute humidity before. These are um, these are like very inaccurate. They're very lossy. The it's not really a good way to look at atmosphere um, and what's going on. But water activity is a little bit more of a more precise metric. So it was very cool. It was very cool to meet him. And yeah, I mean, I haven't used the products or anything myself, but there seemed to be a lot of people who really enjoyed using their stuff at a commercial scale as well.
It's good to hear. I think anything that reduces the chance to have spores populating on product that people are going to be consuming is for the better of the end consumer. And from what everybody like Weed Nerd DWC and Smart Poker and others that I've gotten to talk to who've tried it really seem to enjoy it. And it has dialed in their process to the point where they're getting perfect dry and cure every time. And when you put the effort into grow a really great product, it's nice to have a consistent method that whether it's summer or winter, they can pop it in there and they're gonna have nice bud at the end of it. So I'm happy for those who have gotten them and are enjoying them. I know they are not on the cheap end of the cheap home grow side of things, but sometimes quality is cheaper in the long run, maybe not losing harvests and things like that. Um, I have a Curador. I got it for free, admittedly. I think even those are a little on the high end. You can get a wine fridge for cheaper and it does the same thing. So, or even like some photography equipment cabinets will keep a 50 to 60 degrees and 50 to 60%
Well, that
relative
was their
humidity.
point. Well, that was their point, Jack, that you actually can't do that because the those products are they swing too far. And actually, I've
My
had
point is
scientists.
post
Oh,
dry.
post dry.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
like for long-term storage, one like if you have
Oh
a
yeah,
method,
I completely agree. I don't think it's for long. I'm not sure about long-term
like I don't
storage.
dry in my Curador. I'll say that. I tried it side by side, and it didn't do as well as my hang dry, didn't do as well as the herbs now. And I know people hate on the herbs now, but that one won the side by side every time. I think slow, consistent airflow across the bud so that it dries at a consistent pace is a winning method. And I haven't really had many issues with it, but I, I understand that the temperature ranges are not ideal for some. They're a little bit warmer than many would like to operate. And Canatrol operates at a much lower temperature. And so it is a great option. And I do think if you're like drying in a tent or a warmer area versus a Canatrol, you'd have maybe a higher potential. Like if your harvest was 10 out of 10 and you want it to stay there, um, I think that's going to be, or similar, because it sounds like they're doing devices for like cheese and the commercial market. Maybe you might be able to find one that's not cannabis marketed that is the same device. Because that's the case with like the Curador or any other uh, the lower like wine fridge things that are marketed at cannabis. I see little coolers that are marketed at Dabbers or whatever, but it's just like the same little cooler you can buy on Amazon or anywhere, you know. Um, Same size, same dimension. Like sometimes they're literally the exact same thing, just one has a label stamped on it. The same thing was apparent for hash washing devices. If you wanted to do like a bubble magic machine, it's like $200. But if you go on Amazon and look up like 15 or 20 gallon or 10-gallon washer, they're like anywhere from like 30 to $70. So you're getting at least double, if not that more than that taxed to have a cannabis brand label on some of the stuff sometimes. And that could be
Oh yeah, that's
soil,
for sure.
nutrient, or devices like a hash maker or a drying device. And so I'm always trying to find the lowest cost, best option that is still quality because just because something is inexpensive doesn't mean it's poor quality. Sometimes inexpensive stuff is as good. Sometimes it is actually of poor quality. It's cheap for a reason. Like it's actually cheap. It's inexpensive for the reason that it costs less to produce and it breaks down quicker. And it's of poorer materials from the start. So there are those things to consider. Sometimes like I said earlier, quality is cheaper in the long run. I'm actually one to typically invest in the more expensive thing and buy once, cry once kind of thing. So there's a lot to consider. But yeah, I'm curious if anybody else has any topics maybe that we haven't touched on tonight or anything that's been going around your mind in the cannabis space that maybe you saw a post or a research article or had some conversation with somebody in the space, maybe a medical user or grower that has maybe tickled your fancy lately. Got complete silence. I think I heard a cricket in the background or my cat's water fountain or something running, but it's all right. I think still on the budget side of things, going back to that kind of topic and how much you can cut, I'm curious if you've done any side by sides at all recently, Tao.
No, I haven't been doing much inside right now. I'm getting ready to go for it again because the temperatures are cooling. It's definitely the summer is over, and yeah, the landlord has decided to stop showing the place for sale. So I think I'm gonna alter a couple closets in the corner in the upstairs and see what I could do. And again, shout out to C Person One because I think I'm going to do actually some autos straight away as well as start up a whole bunch of my seed. And but in that veg area, I'm going to put it just throw in some autos straight away, and yeah, we'll see how it goes. But I've been thinking a lot about botrytis and PM and shit, and I think a lot if there's over nutrients, I think that kind of brings that shit on. I don't know if that's true or not.
I think
I,
that
I
you
wish
could
I thought of
say,
this when Brandon Rust was still here, but
I mean, I think Matthew could maybe weigh in on it,
What's the
even
question?
Spartan.
yeah,
He's saying if a plant is overfed or given too much nutrient, what
it's
many
more
would consider like
susceptible
the
to
plant's in
mold.
poor health because it isn't growing well, or it's sickly, it's overfed. Maybe it's more susceptible to molds, mildews, or even other pests.
Oh yeah, well actually, a person I really like, a researcher named Yubin Jung, was at the conference as well, and his research that I really liked, which we went over, I believe, was it was the one where they were looking at like how much nutrient is too much and how much is like too little, like with regards to like what your input is. And because people think like for example that you'll get a benefit. This isn't quite what Tao's asking, but it's related, I think, because some people have it that you should like stress out the plant nutrient wise to have a certain kind of a reaction, a beneficial effect. And basically, they didn't find any evidence for that. In fact, it's typically worse. You know, who to think? Or, but if you like nitrogen load or you phosphorus load, because you hear, oh, flowering needs phosphorus. You know, it's like yes, but again, too much of that is going to be a problem. And they
Nowhere
also
near
found,
as much as is in
yeah,
like a lot of common bloom boosters, for example.
exactly, 100% exactly. So they understand it at surface level because it is true, but they're not understanding the like the fine scale of which that's proportionally true for the plant. So yeah, so I think that's so to answer the question, yeah, I don't think that I mean you also of course get like nutrient lockout and things like that, right? You can certainly have that happen, which is going to be a problem. But also, I did a presentation a while ago with aphids and how a ton of their honeydew can get into the soil and change the soil microbiome. And then what you end up getting is like for people who like to put like sugars, different kinds of sugars in this in the substrate, the microbes can certain microbes might be able to feed on both the sugars the plant produces and these other sugars, while others might not be able to. And you get this like weird competitiveness between the soil microbiome and the plant. And it can make things dysbiotic without being, what was overall like a commensalic, easygoing relationship or a mutually beneficial relationship could become parasitic or the mutualism just breaks down. So I think with added certain kinds of nutrients and other additions like that, that you do have a problem with that. And it's very hard to quantify. And most people making products, they just want you to buy the product. Right. So
That is the truth. Unfortunately, that's one of the things I don't like about most hydro stores is a lot of pushy salesmen that are pushing, unfortunately, marked up and not so high quality product. And even if pest pressure isn't a concern, if it's overfed or underfed, regardless, you're going to lower your yield significantly. If you start to see like the tips burning, the plants getting spotty and things like that, if you're just creating nutrient lockout or deficiency, it's going to lower your overall not only yield but as quality. So it's like all the things that we're shooting for. You want a large yield of the best quality you can get. If we give too much or too little, we're trying to give it that Goldilocks condition as much as we can. Just provide everything to the best of our abilities that the plant needs, but not being too heavy-handed, especially with like chelated nutrients and things like that, because the more rapidly it's able to be uptaken by the plant, the quicker you can kind of get yourself into trouble by, you know, the plant doesn't have as much time to respond, and you might give something even just one time, and a couple days later, you'll see the plant has a really bad response. And Spartan and many others have wisely asked whenever somebody has a problem, what did you do most recently? Like, did you change something? Did you give it something? And oftentimes it's like, yeah, I gave it, super bloom. And if you look at like the actual nutrients, what you break that down into ppm and you like look at the study Matthew was referencing, like maybe it needed like 185 parts per million or something of phosphorus, but we just gave like 900 parts per million. Like we're like talking 9, 10x what you should actually give an appropriate dose. And more often than not, actually, a lot of these canna specific bottled nutrients that like not necessarily the base, the ABs or whatever, but the bloom boosters, the additives, the extras, they can really quickly and easily get you into dangerous or unproductive range. So it's worth warning and noting to those out there who maybe haven't already come across that or maybe um, know that in the back of their mind, but just need a little bit of reminding. Be less is more, oftentimes.
Yeah, don't be a moron.
You can always add more later. That's another good kind of tip. It's like, start with a low dose, and if it still needs some later on, then you can add some later, but you can't necessarily take it off. You can try and flush water through and stuff, but it leads to a whole different set of issues and complications that maybe you would like to avoid. Spartan Grown, how's the road over there? How is are you back to the place yet? Or I think based on the fact that I can't see you yet, I'm
I'm
gonna assume you're
actually,
still on the road.
yeah, it's really dark, but yeah, just pulling into my driveway now, so it's going to be a little bit, probably 5, 10 minutes, and I can get back on my actual computer, be able to see me live with some live action.
We'll have more than one
Thanks.
face on screen again. But I don't know why I was just getting the feeling. I was like, Spartan's almost home. I can just feel it. And the Jack sense is tingling. But good stuff over there. Hopefully safe travels on the roads over there. And we're definitely happy that you still were able to join us and be part of this wonderful conversation so far. And yeah, I'm just curious. This is kind of a silly one, but Do you guys have a preferred big box store? Like the between Lowe's and Home Depot? Is that the big two still? Do you go somewhere else? Is it Walmart, Wally World, as they say in the South? And
There's a
some of my
home
favorite
there's a
stuff.
I
Home
have
Depot near
no,
me.
yeah, I have no brand loyalty. I don't
Tractor
care. I just
Well,
Supply,
I
go
don't
for
have the yeah.
if I can get the same product and it's a different price somewhere else, I'm going to go to the cheapest place unless it's far away. That's my
including like
loyalty.
Amazon, ordering it online.
Well, no, that doesn't. No, I don't want to. No, I like to go into a store so that if I could have a problem, I can go in and fix it. I don't like ordering stuff online.
I think there's a lot to be said about that. It's nice to have that customer service element of like, hey, I've got this receipt. I bought it this date. This is the product you sold to me. I would like to talk to you about this. Like, this is a shit
Yeah,
product. I
I'm a
need it.
dinosaur, man. I'm a dinosaur. I want to be able to walk into a store and look someone in the eye, and if I have a problem, they got to look me in the eye and tell me what the problem is. I don't want
I think it might have
somebody
been
on a phone blowing me off, you know?
It might have been before the show, but we were talking, I think, about age because my birthday is this week, and Spartan and Noah were guessing my age, and it's just funny because then they talked about their age, and I think Noah thought he was the oldest in the group, but Spartan had him by a year, and both of them are grandpas, and Spartan, I think, has three grandkids, and Noah mentioned two, and it's just fascinating to see the different ages in the group and that we can all share this same passion.
I'm
And then
timeless.
Tao aging in reverse.
I'm just timeless.
Absolutely.
Timeless. I love it.
He's like a diamond, He just formed, he's perfect at this point. He's never changing, only actually getting younger, getting better. You're like a fine wine, better with age. Speaking of being on the road and traveling, I know in terms of the state of California, you can only carry a certain amount of product on you. I haven't been in a red state in so long. I'm curious, Tao, do you know like the limits? Like if you were to get pulled over, if you had a gram on you, is it like you're doing time in the pokey, or are you?
I don't
Because
even
that's a
know.
case for a lot of people in
I'm
history. I don't
embarrassed to
mean to
admit.
joke.
I don't even know. But I hate to say also that it wouldn't make a difference really. I'm taking what I'm taking, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. I should investigate that.
It is one of those things, because like if you had 28 grams or whatever, like an ounce, and that's fine, but 28.5 is like 10 years in jail or something. It's like it's worth investigating and figuring out because unfortunately, shout out to Last Prisoner Project, I can't bring it up enough, but there are still people locked up, probably in the state that you're in, and many others for cannabis, nonviolent cannabis crimes in many cases. So yeah, definitely make sure to support if you can Last Prisoner Project, even when we're not doing fundraisers. I think if you have spare funds and or time, you can write some letters and things like that. LastPrisonerProject.com has lots of great stuff going on, and they're doing lobbying on our behalf for the good, changing laws for the better, reducing sentences, getting people's records expunged, things like that, helping people get out and get back to living their life. So shout out to them. Could never say enough good things about them and to Dutchies for matching all the donations throughout the different ad campaigns and stuff like that. Cool to see people helping people in this space. I think that's one of my favorite parts of this community. It really, at times, you see people being selfless and sharing and caring and doing as much as they can in any way. Uh, like I said, from just writing a letter or making a donation, whatever you're able to do. Shout out to them. And a big not shout out to the people in the red states of that are the politicians that are holding the people down, like Tao, that don't allow him to freely and legally enjoy like his American top hat that I look at that the people can't see on Zoom reminds me of the freedom and him taking a little bite out of the world. That's like Tao taking a bite out of the cookie, staying young. We got Spartan Grown rejoining us. I think that's on the computer. So he got there a little bit quicker than anticipated. I think he's dropping from the phone, and we're gonna have him live here in just a few seconds. So always fun. This is a live show, folks. Just a reminder. If you haven't already hit that like button, we're here live. That might get a few extra people in there. And I can see his face. He's got an even longer beard. He's been here a few more years. Lets the beard grow a little longer. It's not that I trimmed it. It's like we're like trees. You can count the rings.
I'm just so glad to be out of my car seat and into an actual seat. I feel way more comfortable.
I know the feeling. I'm gonna do a little road trip, and even as much as I love my car and I love this very road trip that we're going on, Uh, the best part is being at the destination, getting there, eating the food, drinking the drinks, seeing the people and enjoying the time and the space. And getting home. There's always something, even after a great trip. I love the place we're going, but I'm going to be so happy to get back to my own bed when I do. And it's one of
Yeah,
those things.
traffic's terrible, man. I don't know. I don't know if I'll ever be cured of the road rage that comes with traffic, but I don't know if I-94 through Michigan and Indiana, especially Indiana. I fucking hate 94 through Indiana and Illinois. I gotta say, they need to fix that damn road, even though it's got like five fucking lanes or six fucking lanes, always through Indiana. Traffic stop every time. It's I don't know, something that really gets under my skin, but there's nothing I can do about it.
Hate to give you more reasons to not like California, but yeah, we got plenty of the traffic out here as
Oh
well.
yeah, I've seen it, and that's all I needed to know. Is like I have no desire to even visit if that's what I got to deal with. No
There's
desire.
some rural spots that are nice, but like if you're gonna go to any
Yeah,
big
but they don't have
city
the
or the
airports
beaches,
there. You gotta you gotta fly into the city.
there are some rural like you'd be surprised. There's some rural airport. You gotta fly into like LAX and then take like a, prop plane or
Smaller
something
plane.
to like a random little airport, but they've got all these little ones. You'd be real surprised. There's one here in San Diego that is so small. It has one terminal. I used to fly from there up to LA and then back to Ohio. And it was a 20-minute flight. They didn't even have bathrooms. It was like such a short flight. And one time I really thought it was the end of Jack. I was up in the air and caught these Santa Ana winds, and the plane literally was rocking like this. Like it felt like a bad movie.
Oh
And I was
man.
like, this is it. I'm done for. I'm fucked. This is the last plane ride for me. And even the guy next to me, who's like air traffic controller at LAX, he's like, "Oh, I do this flight all the time. Everything's gonna be fine." I saw him sweating, gripping onto the seats. I was like, "Oh, if he's sweating and freaking out, I'm like, this is not a good situation." But shout out to that pilot, pulled it out, and I made it. Obviously, I'm here. But yeah, it can be scary when you get up high in planes. I don't know if my mom's real afraid to fly. I've flown so much that I just don't even think about it. But occasionally, shit, we've been seeing this last year. There's been some quality control issues over at some of these big airline producing companies. I won't name names because I don't want to disappear like many of their whistleblowers. But yeah, it's do you guys travel by air often? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Do I travel by air more often than I like? I don't like flying. Again, maybe I'm Mr. Negative now today. I'm not a big fan of flying, that's for sure. But it definitely gets you there way faster. And that's the reason I will do it. But if I can, I'd rather drive. I just
Well, and in your case, you
having
went
to
to
be
like
there an hour before, the walking through security and everything. It's just like,
if you're
yeah.
in
And then you
Cleveland,
never
it's
know
two
who you're
hours
sitting next
before.
to.
Yeah, I'm not afraid to travel, but if I'm when I'm boarding the plane, if the pilot happens to be there, I ask every single time, "You feeling okay? Are you suicidal?" And I will every time because that one guy, the pilot was suicidal that day, and he took the plane, went right into the mountain.
You think he would
So,
have told you?
well, you never know, but imagine like me querying the guy, he breaks down, I saved like 200 people. You never know. You never know.
You
So
are
yeah, I
like
always
Vin
ask.
Diesel, so this is like a movie. I could see this
When
happening.
when
Tao
I
coming
went
in.
skydiving, I asked the guy, I'm like, "Feeling okay? You're not suicidal, right?" He's like, "No, I'm good. I'm good. No worries." Tasha, shush. Sorry.
That's a
Yeah.
big ferocious dog for anybody who doesn't know. It was shown recently on the podcast. You got to watch out for Tao's dog if you ever come around. No one's gonna, pick that plant before Tao because there is a ferocious killer guard dog. So be careful. How late do you think you're gonna push it into the season? We're getting into October here, Croptober, a lot of places.
Yeah. I'm gonna until the freeze comes around, unless it tells me it's ready, and it's not telling me that at all. I think,
You got white hair
yeah,
still?
yeah. I
Yeah,
think a
let it
lot of
ride.
people that I'm seeing, like with taking the plants down, they shouldn't, man, personally. Or
Mean Gene from
if it's an
Mendocino
issue,
always has the best
yes, he
memes
always has the best news. But
about
if
that. He's
you
like, first rain, panic chop, and it shows
panic,
like the guy with like the axe from like I won't even mention the movie, but yeah.
yeah, but if you're really that scared, take some of it, take half of it, and leave the rest. That's like I've been there. I've taken shit down early and was disappointed.
I
And
will
I
also say
was
I've had some white hair bud that ended up
like,
like
oh
turning
yeah,
orange or
killer.
red after I harvested it, and the bud was super
You
fire,
could still
like
get
great
killer
flavor, good
too.
high.
Yeah, yeah. But God knows what it would have been if you waited another 2 weeks. And like, yeah, if another thing is if you have a decent size crop, you could also keep taking it, so that this way it's not an overwhelming trim job, or you can take them fresh and trim whatever. You know what I'm saying? But I think a lot of people harvest too early. For my taste, I want the shit where you take 3 hits and you want to put the joint on, and yeah, that's not a lot of times that happens to me, even with my own shit. So yeah,
I look for those phenos where I can hit the bong bowl one time, and then I see the bong that has this like one little corner off the bowl. It's not even like a full snap, and I'm just feeling it so much that it's just sitting there for like 15, 20 minutes because I'm like, damn,
yeah, and you
like
get the
I don't
jar
need
out and
more.
everything to go pack it, and you go to get it, and it's still in there. You're like,
Still green in
shit,
there. I'm like, oh
yeah,
wow, that's a good sign. Usually with a new pheno, admittedly, that I'm not strain tolerant to, it's pretty rare that something ring my bell that hard if it's just flower, if I smoked it 10 times or 5 times in the past.
Yeah, that's the thing is strain tolerance, right? I think everybody has their own tolerance. If you just And as a home grower, I think they're the first people to recognize this because you grow one plant and you might have, depending on your skill and all the other factors, anywhere from half an ounce or all the way up to multiple ounces. And it's very easy to get multiple ounces. And if you're sitting there smoking multiple ounces in a row of the same stuff, your tolerance, I find, really builds. I think it's even to that profile, that cannabinoid terpene, whatever profile because that's why I am a perpetual grower. I'm not a monocropper in my home grow because of that very thing. And so I have to have different strains because if I smoke the same strain again and again and again, then eventually it just doesn't have the same effect on me anymore. It doesn't work as well. So
I
like I
think that,
switch it up.
like you're talking about with the profile, I've heard the term chemovar referring to, I think, like the chemical profile, like not even just the strain, but like the chemovar is how it expresses in like Brandon's garden. He has a chemovar that is a heavy skunk of his blueberry train mac, right? And he's got the crinkle cut that has like that vanilla. Like those are chemovars within the strain or cultivar. And they have a very specific chemical variety grown and cultivated in his setting by him that might or might not transfer to if it was sent to Michigan and grown by Spartan in his setting. So it is really fascinating with these biological, things and the varieties of terpene expressions that are possible and aromatic profiles and tastes and flavors and highs. It is obvious how we can get tolerant when there's a million options, right? And then you take this one that's got like 300 of them and you're taking that same 300 over and over and over and over versus like if you grew 6 plants and you smoke a little bit of this one, a little bit of that one, a little bit of that one, and you've got variety. You're like, oh, this one I'm going to do in the morning. This one I'm going to do in the afternoon. This one I'm going to do at night. Even if you just did three, that enough right there, like I was describing, can break up a little bit of that strain tolerance versus like I just grew 2 plants of Velvet Punch my last harvest. So I have like two different varieties of Velvet Punch and they're both pretty, mellow to like sedative. They're a hybrid to more of an indica. And they're definitely not like gonna clean the house type bud. And I use that usually in the afternoons or the evenings. I'm not gonna wake up and smoke that typically unless I'm in pain. It works for that, and I'll use it in that case sometimes. But I've got a lot of other stuff that I'll go to, and for a while, and I've still got a bunch of it because I just grew. I was a victim of my own success. I grew too much of it, and so I fucking you can only smoke so much, and if you have more than you're used to having, then you're gonna have more sit around by the nature of it. And um, yeah, just been busy with work and things like that, so not seeing people as frequently in and out. Normally we'd give some away or whatever, and run out of it that way. But when it's plentiful and you're not necessarily grabbing for it first every single time because it's like, oh, I've got so much of it. It's like it's always there. It's a staple. You don't it's not as that rare delicacy, that little like one piece of temple ball that I have of like Frenchie's cherry pie that he made, and I still have like sitting in the little blue Myron glass jar that I can go and sniff it and just think like, oh yes, Frenchie, ooh la la, the amazing hash from Northern California, some grower up there. I gotta remember who the farmer is, but he only worked with incredibly good cultivators that grew amazing plants, and he would do select batches that were just so fire. So I'm so happy we got to talk to him a couple of times. He was so fun, man. He always had such a great personality. I know Brandon got to meet him in person. My buddy Vegan Doja took his hash making class that he did, and I know his wife, Madam Cannoli, is still doing a lot of the media and press, and I think she might still be going around teaching the techniques and stuff like that. So shout out to the Cannoli whole family there, and RIP to Frenchie. Definitely one of the greats, and another big loss in the cannabis community that is still sorely missed.
Absolutely. And everyone that just, he lives on, and all the hash makers that have learned from Frenchie and carry his traditions on. He lives on through them. So shout out to everyone that he lives on through to keep those traditions alive so we all can enjoy those what was it, the heated water in the wine bottles, pressing it out. Oh, it's so cool.
It
Anyway,
is. I
shout
love
out
that technique, and
to Frenchie.
he's amazing. Another, it made it to even our commercial market now has it. You can get Nasha extracts, does Frenchy style, like wine bottle pressed out, and Sitka Gold does a hash here in California that is like the old school style. They have like dry sift as well as some Frenchy style Temple Ball. And actually, I got another one right here in front of me. Who is this from? Uh, Hella Dank. This is a cherry ice cream cake. It was actually pretty good. I've been smoking on it. It's a 5-star Temple Ball hash. So, and it's very much Frenchy style. And I like that they didn't put 6-star because it's not like a full melt. I'm not throwing it in the Puffco, but it does melt onto the flower, and it's real terpy and just potent. It's got the hashishine in there for sure too. A little bit of that spicy hashiness to it. So big fan of Frenchie's work and everybody who has been taught. And that's the beauty of like even like our show. Like if and when someone's gone, we have all these episodes and like all this. I get photos still in emails just like randomly, like, hey, check out my plants. I've been listening to you guys for years. Like, here's my garden. And it just puts a smile on my face every time. I'm like, I see a lot of the same names and faces here each week, but I also see new names and faces all the time. And it's so cool to like get that email with just like, here's my garden. Thank you so much for all that you've taught us. Like, this is you've enabled us to, make this happen. And it's obviously not just us. There's a lot of other great information out there, but we're happy to be able to be one of the sources to spread that information and just motivate and encourage and, keep people growing. Because part of it is just staying in the game and putting up the good fight, even when costs get higher and, it might not be as worth it as it once was for some people. But ultimately, if you're doing it for yourself, it'll always be worth it, I think, in the end, because having that control over your medicine is such a amazing power. It's self-empowering, and for a medical patient, it's hard to beat, saying I could choose whatever strain I want. There's thousands out there. I can grow them all in my garden and keep the ones that I like and get rid of the ones I don't. I mean, it's a perfect situation, honestly. Even if you can just have 6 plants in your garden, like it's not that's not perfect. I wish you could have 100. I wish you could keep as many as you want without limit. But even with just like six, that's like you get three or two for the morning, two for the afternoon, and two for the evening that you could cycle through. And then I'd go Spartan style, just have them like face off, like who's the best? You can't stay unless you're top six. And it makes almost this competitive pressure where like when one company buys another, sometimes the competition goes away and they make a worse product overall. I like it when there's two companies fighting it out and they're like, I want to make my thing cheaper or I want to make my thing better or come out with a new product to
Competition, yeah, man.
yeah.
That always, competition usually always is going to give you the best result. I don't know. I guess collaboration might be better than competition. Maybe that's a better outcome, but good luck finding that, man. I mean, I hate to be a pessimist, but when it comes to
Even
business,
friendly competition, like that's like you're collaborating, but you can have like a little bit of like how you guys did it with the 2020 Mendocino. Who's got the best cut? Like we all bring our thing, and
right?
then everybody gets to take home all of the entries. And if you liked one or felt it was better or different than yours, you could keep it and work with it. So that is a community building effort that I think needs to be done more so. The genetic sharing, the open sourcing of genetics, and that's what makes our community strong. And that's what I think is going to help us stand up to and beat the big corporations is like there's I actually was a little bit sad about the whole beer scene because I thought big corporate was like so dominant and they do buy a lot of these microbrews and things like that, but there's still a lot of independently owned ones. And I guess if you total up all of the microbreweries sales, they sell more than the big corporate guys. So it's been a shift, and people do appreciate local and quality and the different flavors. And there's a even if you don't brew your own, people like the craft. They like to get into drinking different beers. And I met some guy who rated like 2 or 3 thousand different ones. Like that was his thing. He loved rating, and just like me, like rating different strains. It's like there's common relation,
Absolutely.
but it's a fun little thing. And I know that Michigan Bros Grow Show is tonight because I saw they're better at me on YouTube. They put that little preview up, like, "Hey, we're going to be on tonight. Watch later or whatever. Give me the notification." I don't do all that stuff. I probably should. It would make our audience be more regularly here and engaging in the chat. Sorry for not being as YouTube savvy and motivated on that end. But I'm going to pass it to Spartan Grown. He's got about 15 minutes. I know he just had a long ride. He's probably got to do some things before he gets going over to the Mission Bros Grow Show. So final thoughts and shout outs before you get running.
I want to shout out first to you, Jack, because hey, maybe you don't do the preview, but you do the work of putting the fucking show up on the audio platforms where it's very popular. I get a lot of those emails you're talking. I get a lot of emails like that from the audio listeners, man. And shout out to them to listen to us at work while you're out there busting your ass and trying not to fall asleep at your desk or at whatever you're doing. I've been there, done that, and I'm with you guys, man. I feel for you. And shout out to chat. I didn't even get into chat today. I was on the phone most of the time, and so it was impossible. And then now I didn't even have time to really pull it up. I'm sorry. I love you guys. I'm probably gonna watch the show again to see what y'all were saying about me. But anyways, I'll go. I'm gonna jump over to Mr. Bros Grow Show and I'll hang out with my friends over there, and hopefully we'll see some of you guys over there. Uh, but either way, protect home grow. If you're an outdoor grower, watch out for the worst pest of them all. It's other humans. And much love to everybody else, and keep on growing.
Keep on growing, Spartan. Cheers.
Spread the
Thank you so much.
wisdom, Spartan, evil humans.
I had a thought. I got a little sidetracked on the exit. But yeah, just damn, what was it? It's like a butterfly gone in the wind. But cheers to Spartan. Always thankful that he is a champion of the home grow mission, going out there, getting and advocating on the steps of, the
Oh,
political. Go ahead, Tom.
we could talk about, didn't Gavin Newsom just do something in California? Like made any sort of THC even from
Yes.
hemp illegal?
I think
And
it was
someone was
proposed. I
point.
don't think it's passed yet. Maybe it
I
has
Oh,
think
though.
it
I
passed
think he
actually. I think
signed
it,
it. Yeah,
it activated a couple of days ago,
and
maybe
someone was
yesterday.
pointing out that
Yeah.
federally hemp is legal, so having it in just the state of California is just hurting California. The rest of people in California can still order it from another state hemp product with THCA in it. So, but yeah, that was an interesting move by.
I think we're going to see a lot of that. It's regulation and industry capture. They're trying to make sure that people have to go to the dispensaries or whatever to buy it. And there is a decently large population of groups that are selling hemp that is really high THC cannabis that are using the loophole that THCA is not the same thing as THC. And until it gets heated, um, THCA doesn't really become THC in high amounts. And so they're selling basically cannabis as hemp and not getting the same permits or licenses that they would otherwise need to operate in some of these states. So it gets a little bit gray or straight up unregulated in a lot of markets, but that is certainly bigger than most of us are involved in. I think a lot of us are just on the home grow side of things, having fun, hunting
Yeah,
for the best.
when are they proposed to change the farm bill? Because that's the next shoe to drop, supposedly,
They've
right?
tried a couple times and it
Oh,
hasn't
okay.
gone through yet. There's a lot of talk of that Farm Bill 2.0 or
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, like, come on. I mean, not only that, but the massive waste of time that, like, for those who don't know, pretty sure the DCC, there was a whistleblower who was like, "Hey, you know that people have been having pesticides in the product, and instead of warning people, instead of making this a big deal, instead they spent like millions of dollars in funds for making people buy more product because the industry was flagging." we all know why it was flagging, right? All the other rigmarole that is true in all the other states, but cranked up to 11. And then, um, you know, that person who brought up the concerns got sidelined, so now they're suing the DCC, which I think is appropriate. I mean, I think it's for a just reason, it sounds like. But even if we get all the legalization happening, I'm not even sure that we can regulate in all the ways that I think most people would be okay with, like making sure the stuff is safe, for one. Um, yeah,
To be fair,
I
it does happen
just,
with food too. There's lots of
of
recalls
course,
and things like that. And
but
uh,
but I mean, maybe that's true, but it's not, I mean, I don't think it's really the same thing, right?
no, they're definitely not. The levels of regulation are extremely different. I will say there are groups making it work, which is incredible to me. The fact that people can operate within the California cannabis market and have passable material, when it's a damn near impossible task, if we're being honest with ourselves, the levels that they have to go through, it's like it's a stricter test than anything else. There's no organic food, like unless you go to some really, really artisan person who grows or does something a very specific way. But that's like to their own standard. There's not, to my knowledge, a government agency that regulates a food or crop out there as heavily as cannabis is regulated in California. Maybe another state like Michigan or somebody else, but like the CFU counts, the heavy metal counts, the things that can make a fail happen. Uh, whether it's food or medicine, I don't know. Maybe certain pharmaceutical things are regulated to the same levels, but in terms of food, alcohol, tobacco, nothing is even close in terms of all the different levels of testing. Although that said, we're a newer industry and there's still corruption and there's still poor quality labs. So that plays into it. There's just straight up fucking amateur hour at some of this shit. It's like you hire
Yeah,
minimum
New York.
wage.
I
Well,
remember.
even
Go ahead, Matthew.
I'll just say this. I agree with that. One well, it's like the problem is that I think a fundamental problem is that we can't come to an agreement about what's appropriate because you stand here and tell very truthfully that it's way more um, restrictive and regulated, at least officially, than many food products. But by the same token, there's still people applying, like we said at the beginning of this session, pymetrozine and other things that aren't being tested for, and that's because they aren't tested for. So it could even be more comprehensive. Um, so it's kind of like some people I've seen people in various sort of schools of thought where it's like, no, we should be testing more, or or the test should
I'm
be,
for testing
paid
more,
for,
but
but
do it with
that's like,
purpose.
well, but it's
Like,
expensive. So who's paying for
yeah,
that, Jack? You know,
the end consumer ultimately, and then that pushes people to the black market where people aren't going to be testing. That's the
right?
unfortunate reality. The
Unless it's
but
paid
like
for by the
we
government.
could do things that
But then,
would help, but like instead of testing for CFUs, looking for the actual harmful things specifically like aspergillus and all the other specific ones, which they do test for a good amount of them in California. That's not the way everywhere. I know like Michigan, it was like 50,000 for adult use, but 10,000 for medical. And it didn't matter if it was 10,000 of aspergillus or 10,000 of
some
yeast,
other thing
or
that's no big deal, exactly.
right. So there, I think, needs to be a little bit more specificity sometimes, but it's really difficult because we get into these nuanced conversations and regulators don't necessarily have the same level of sophistication as the scientists, the cultivators necessarily, and or whoever, even like IPM
Oh
people
yeah.
that are intimately handling this stuff on a day-to-day basis. Like you mentioned in the past, like a case where uh, you were exposed to poison basically because somebody was improperly, even here in California, we were looked at as this place that's like so heavily regulated. Um, but somebody can buy the wrong shit or whatever and expose you to something that they say they're not exposing you to something and put your health at risk. And I'm glad that you're still here with us now to this day, but it's like some people get seriously harmed and to the point like of death or serious injury or like cancers and things like that. So it's something that should be taken more seriously in some regards, But at the same time, if you make so much red tape and regulation, there's not an ability to do anything. Like you can't have a market if I don't know. There's
Well, maybe like a 30% like sin tax is a bad idea, right? Like
that certainly hurts. That certainly hurts. I think it's if you spend $100 in San Diego, it's 132 out the door. Think
right.
about that. 32%
Yeah.
tax.
That's so mind numbing.
Yeah, like I always mention with alcohol prohibition, the first like 5 to 10 years, there was a 1% total tax on alcohol because they wanted to eliminate the unregulated market. They wanted to bring everybody in. Said, hey, get your permit, get your license, come here, do it the legal way. Make yourself a brand. You know, come into the market. You can sell it, pay 1%. And eventually it went up. I think it's like 5 or 10 or something. And I think tobacco is like 20 to 30, depending on which state, city, county you're in. But cannabis is still up there. I used to say it was the highest, but I have actually seen tobacco is about that same amount. I think California, I think they're around between like 30 and 40%, depending on what product you're getting.
New York is pretty high in the tobacco tax. But I was going to say earlier, I know New York uh, first instituted some sort of either mold count. I forget exactly what it was, but after everyone failed, they just lowered the bar drastically and let it all go. So, like, that's one thing I was going to bring up, and I think maybe the same kind of thing might have happened in Oregon with something. I don't know, but yeah, you bring up great points. That it's a new industry and people don't know. But who, like, if they don't know, then why would they dictate some of these things when they could, they could, learn, could learn, and yeah, that's one of the things people can't grow organically. I think even in Canada because of those CFU camps you're talking about, and it's beneficial bacteria that you should eat actually that are could be making making it fail the test. So I think that's an issue, and that's all I could say about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I hate that they have to irradiate everything. It's like, couldn't there be a way to like verify that it's safe without just irradiating every single batch? Like it's seems like a little bit heavy-handed in my perspective. But there's
It
about
doesn't
three of
even
us.
destroy the substances that the microbes produce and all that. But yeah. Yeah, we
Yeah,
have 3 minutes and three of us, right? And
I'll
then there
pass
were
it
three.
first to you, Matthew Gates, for your final thoughts and shout outs before we get running.
Final thoughts are again, if you haven't ever done it before, don't think you won't get pests. New things come about all the time. I'm sure that we will have another hop latent viroid type thing come about, and that even isn't a solved problem yet. So just always stay on your toes, whether you're a home grower or at any scale, really, and it'll save everyone collectively. We'll all do better for if you get your pest situation figured out. You can find my information zenthanol.com for professional inquiries. You can contact me or you can see my videos on youtube.com/zenthanol. And you can join my Patreon where we talk about IPM and identification, that kind of stuff. So that's helpful for you. $1 a month. You can join the Discord channel on my Patreon. And that's about it.
Thank you so much for joining us. And I would say all of us on the panel have either past or present dealt with some sort of pest. So even if you're as diligent as like Brandon in his commercial space when he was doing all the things and applying all the things, things can get through. Things have, ways of breaking through even the best of systems. So when that happens, you just got to be diligent. Do like Noah was mentioning, spend at least 5, 10 minutes a day in your garden crop scouting, if not more, depending on how many plants you have and how good your eyes are and how diligently you can look through it. But I'm glad we got to talk some IPM tonight. It's always a good topic to brush up on and keep people sharp. So without further ado, last and certainly not least, we've got the American one.
Yeah, and especially important right about this time of year where it's not so comfortable for the bugs outside, so they'll be trying to sneak away inside your plants inside. They smell that shit. Um, that's one thing. And oh yeah, so I talked to one of my buddies in New York, and he could have grown plants in his backyard, and he just didn't. I was like, "What the fuck is your problem, dude?" So I want to tell everyone. Well, now it's kind of late, but if you're in a legal place where you can do it, do it tomorrow, man. Set up something in your closet. You don't have to spend a ton of money, and if you fail, start over. Yeah, yeah. That's what I'm saying. I'm the American one on YouTube, and the American one underscore with underscore Keens on the IG. And yeah, you can hit me up on IG. And yeah, peace out, everyone. Have a great week.
Great having you as always, Tal, and I agree. It could be as simple as a pot, some soil, and a seed, or a clone from your local dispo. It might be like 10 or 15 bucks if you've got one in your area. It can be that simple. You really don't need to make it too complicated. You can put it in a windowsill. You can eventually get a light. You can eventually get a larger pot. You can eventually learn more about soil chemistry and things like that, but you don't need to get too complicated. Just some regular, organic potting mix can be good. It'll take care of business, or just, the best quality soils that you can find. Do a little bit of looking around and maybe even just ask somebody at your local garden center, like, what are some of your favorite well-draining soils, things like that. And I will say, speaking of something Spartan mentioned right before he left, I finally remembered. The community listeners out there on the podcast platform, y'all are amazing. Like, the metrics show that like most of you listen to like 99 or like 100% of the show, like literally start to finish the entire thing, which is cool because um, on YouTube, it's usually like 30 minutes. I think people get in and out. They're here when they can be. They got stuff going on in life. I get it. It's live. And so amazing to see that the people go and listen back to the podcast and hear it start to finish. So we really do appreciate you. And I try my best to get it out there every Monday as fast as I can. So without further ado, you can find me at Jack Greenstock on Instagram. Jack_Greenstock is my backup account there, as well as my name on X, which is formerly known as Twitter. My sale is still going on. I kept the 50% running a little bit longer. I know a lot of people have been reaching out saying they've been having hard times, things like that. So trying to keep a little bit of a good price going on 50strains.com. If you're looking for 50 strains of green, there's only like 20-ish copies left of the second edition. So grab it now before they're all gone, because when they're gone, they're gone. I might do a few extra print when I finish up 50 strains of purple, but I'm not sure on that. I'm gonna have to get pricing and see. I need to reconnect with my printer and things like that. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, like I said, when they're gone. So get them now. If you did want a copy of that book, it's gonna be the best price. It's only gonna go back up. Sale's gonna end in a little bit, but appreciate you all so much for hanging in and listening. And we'll catch you all next week. Peace and love. Keep growing, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.